Cheryl Dorsey, it's good to have you here to talk about this. We talk a lot about, de-escalation. And when you look at what happened here, that did not seem to happen. What in your view, should have happened?
Well, what should have happened is that the officers should have broadcast a perimeter, provided responding units with the direction of travel and a description of the suspect who was reported to be in control of their taser, and contain the area and try to take the person into custody within that perimeter. You don't get to shoot someone because you can't catch them. And so I'm happy to see that this action has been taken by the mayor. Understand that they can move swiftly when they want to. Be clear, the police chief stepped down, which is very different from leaving the department. She will assume a different role on the department. She's only changed office and changed title, so be clear about that. And we'll see what happens. I think when officers are held accountable, their peers will start to understand that they're going to have to comport themselves in a way very different from what they've come accustomed to, using deadly force as a first resort rather than a last resort as trained, manufacture and come up with a justifiable situation for something that should have never occurred, and generally great deference is given to their version because they've killed the other party involved, and so we only have one story, the one that they tell.
I'm wondering, and we've heard this before recently a lot. What do you hear what do you think when you hear the term "a few bad apples" and that as a description of the problem?
Well, I believe that to be true. I mean, there's 18,000 police departments across the nation, and how many officers are on all 18,000, I couldn't tell you, but I know in my 20 years, I certainly worked with a couple of bad apples. But there were far more officers who were there for the right reason, who were doing the right thing. It's unfortunate, much like the news, if it bleeds, it leads. And so these bad officers are getting our attention. Now that they have our attention, we need to remove them from the police department. And to further help identify others who may not be known just yet, police departments need to engage in psychological evaluations to figure out where these officers are in terms of implicit bias and institutionalized racism.
Yeah, I guess, I keep coming back to this thought that, when you think about that Mr. Floyd, I mean, that was about a counterfeit $20 bill. This was a call out about a man asleep in his car in a fast food parking lot, and now he is dead. I'm just wondering, what do you see as where lethal force can be used? No matter what happened leading up to it, the fact of the matter is, at the time the shot was fired, the man was running away.
And so we're taught and trained that deadly force can only be used in immediate defense of life, your life or the life of another. And at that point, as he was running away, albeit with their taser, they may have been a little embarrassed and didn't want to get ribbed about it later, but you don't get to shoot someone. And so officers have learned that they can say whatever they want after the fact to justify, because jurors tend to want to believe officers. It's a difficult occupation to have, and it's worked. And so now that officers are being arrested and charged and jailed, I think this will give some pause. But we really do need those psychological evaluations, because there's a lot of people out there that are working with a skill set and a temperament that's not conducive to law enforcement, I believe.
Well, and you and I touched on this, I think, last week. I mean, as a standalone phrase, defund the police sounds pretty crazy, but, those who are serious proponents of it point out that it's about diverting funds from some current police activity, whether it's drug and alcohol abuse, mental health, homelessness and other things, moving that away from police responding to that and move it to social services and fund them properly so they do it. If you've got somebody asleep in a car who might not be intoxicated, I mean, is that something that, police officers should be showing up to? And perhaps that could be something that's part of that restructuring. What do you think?
Well, listen, if sense were common, everyone would have it, and so you can't teach it. But what do you do when you stop someone for a traffic violation and you find out that they're having some sort of a mental episode? You don't have the luxury of calling in a civilian to come in and try to decipher and figure out what's going on. I promise you, as a patrol officer and a patrol supervisor, the officers that are working in the field could care less about how monies are moved around, shifted. It's not going to change their day-to-day activities. And to be quite honest with you, absent accountability, it doesn't seem to faze them much in terms of what they do right now. We're just right on the heels of having buried someone who was murdered in front of all of us, and officers can't even contain themselves in the midst of protest and things that have occurred since the murder and the funeralizing of George Floyd. So officers are going to do what they do until you hold them accountable.
Retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, thanks so much. Appreciate your time.